In this episode, I speak to Kerri L Watt about PR. We discuss getting started with PR, finding journalists in your industry, tips for being on TV and radio, the power of podcasting, and newsjacking. Hi, Kerri. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No problem. So, Kerri, I know you work in PR as a PR coach and trainer, but who do you help and how do you help them?
So, currently, I work with a lot of small businesses. I guess being one myself, I'm kind of just instantly drawn to them. I do, yeah, so I can do PR for companies, but usually it is more on the training side. So, I'll show company owners, marketing teams, agencies, basically how to land some epic media coverage and elevate, raise their profile, find more clients, and use, free media coverage to do some pretty cool stuff.
Okay, great. And for marketing professionals who are getting started with PR, what do you think are good reasons to do PR?
Oh, some good reasons. Well, I mean, firstly, other than your time, doing PR is completely free. Obviously, time is still, of massive value, but there's no massive costs included. And that's always the initial draw for people when they're like, oh, PR's free. Oh, okay, that's cool. That sort of sparks their interest. But then actually, when you're like, well, this is actually what media coverage and getting in the press can actually do for your business after that. And then, yeah, they kind of absolutely love it. So I suppose that's a few basic reasons. Is it it's low cost. I always say that with the right, expert guidance, anyone can learn to do PR. I've trained people who have absolutely no marketing, PR, sales, any kind of experience like that. They're quite technical, never dabbled in marketing, and they've still been able to pick up stuff and kind of do it. So it's kind of open and available and accessible to everyone. It's free. And you can use it to find new clients, investors, all those kind of things. There's so much you can do with it. So, I mean, I'm a bit biased, but I love it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when it comes to goals, not everybody knows the best goals to go for initially. Sometimes there's a bit of trial and error. Are there any ideas that people might have that you think are definitely bad reasons to do PR? Like if somebody is looking for a lot of leads quickly, there might be other ways of going about it. Are there any other reasons that are, I guess, red flags if someone says we want to do PR to do this that you think it's a bad idea?
I think if it's just a tick box exercise and it's just a because, like for me, I need a goal. I need something that there's a point to all this. Like, are you looking for new clients? Or do you just want some really cool logos in your as seen in, strip of media logos on your website? Like, no matter what the goal is, I think there has to be a purpose. So not having any purpose, just let's just do some PR, and then like that's, I don't know. I don't always think that's the best, strategy for things. I like to have a goal and a reason for doing things. And also massively, like you just said, in your example, I know I've had multiple clients over the 10 plus years I've been as a self-employed PR person, where I'm literally there like, was it like last chance saloon type place? They're like, we've got no clients, we've got no money, we need to get some money in immediately. I've sometimes known that, but not always known that that's their situation. And then they kind of, we're working together, and like a week in, they're like, why aren't we on the BBC? Why haven't we got this? Why haven't we done this? We're failing. We need clients. And I'm like, whoa, like I can't save your business overnight. So that's, if you're in that crisis mode of I need to save the business, yes, absolutely PR can help you, but there kind of has to be, you can't be in like that negative crisis mode, like it's just a bad energy all round, right? So there has to be, yes, it has to come from a good place, I think.
Yeah, for that crisis energy, I've certainly seen companies where they're really struggling and they hear about digital marketing and inbound marketing and they think it's the holy grail. So they latch on thinking it'll save them. It won't. If the
Yeah,
company is in crisis mode, they need a bigger strategy to save them, and then PR and marketing could potentially help, but it's not going to. Yeah, if the ship is sinking, you need to plug the hole, not get a
right.
PR person to spin it as a win.
Yeah, especially an external person as well, right? Because I don't know the ins and outs of everything. So you're not even, as much as you can do a bit of research on a client, it's quite hard to step in at that point and try and save them when you don't actually know that that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And speaking of hiring people, when should you outsource your PR versus when should you keep it in-house, do you think?
It really depends on the company. I guess the size, the resources you have, whether or not you can do it in house. If you have even just one person internally that you can get to do it for like an hour a week or a day a month, like anything, as long as you've got what at least one person that can do it. I would say, just get a little bit of training, whether that's some online training, get someone like me to come in for, half a day and just go through it and teach them, or read some books. There's loads of free information out there as well. So it is something that you could do in house. It just depends on, that's not everyone's ideal situation. Some people want to do that, other people don't. There's no like, it's like outsourcing anything really. There's no like set time that you have to do it. I would say if you have the willingness internally and you have the resources, i.e., one person that can spare a little bit of time and wants to learn it, then that could be fine. Otherwise, you could find an agency to work with, or just a freelancer, a consultant, or a smaller agency. It doesn't have to be a 20 grand a month agency in London. It could be a freelancer that lives down the road from you. Um, there's so many different ways to access PR support. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And you mentioned the BBC earlier, and I know from following you on LinkedIn, you've had amazing wins, like started working with clients, and 24 hours later, they're on the news, they're on the
Right.
BBC, they're on local radio. How do you get people on TV and radio?
Well, from a training point of view, I haven't technically done it. I have just given them the tools and given them the tips and tricks to then go and reach out themselves. If it's a PR client that I'm doing, that I'm physically doing the work, then obviously that is me reaching out. But quite often, those wins that you've just mentioned are people that we've literally just had a one-off like strategy call, like just a 1 hour call that I'll do online. And then I guess if it's the right type of person, they've invested in an hour's time with a PR person, they've taken on board everything I've said, they've saved all the links or whatever it was that I've sent them and all the tips and tricks that I've written down and passed on to them. And then they've obviously got the fire inside of them to actually go and implement everything that I've said. So those wins are like, it's all on them. I know I kind of said, here you go, here's what to do, but they've actually got to have the motivation to then go and do it. And it can honestly be as simple as just reaching out to a journalist, or it could be seeing something on social media. A producer says, hey, we're talking about this show, we're talking about this topic on this show tomorrow, we need some guests. And then you go, hey, I know about that. And then they say, oh great, tell me more, who are you? It can be as simple as that. There's PR opportunities out there for people to find, as well as kind of cold pitching ourselves to journalists. They're also out there asking for people. So it's a very long-winded way of saying I've given them advice, they've taken the advice, and they've just gone out there and done it.
Okay, okay, great. So they do that themselves, unfortunately. So you mentioned going on social media as one way to find journalists. Are there any other tips or tricks you can give people to find relevant media people in their industry?
So if it's within your industry that you will probably already know, there might be particular podcasts, radio shows, or certainly little segments of various stations or magazines that are, always delivered to yours or your clients' offices every month. You'll probably have an idea of various media outlets in your industry. Um, Getting featured in them can literally be as simple as opening the magazine and seeing who the editor is. Oh great, it's that's the name right there. They sometimes have a staff list. You flick through the magazine, you can see the writers' names all throughout a newspaper, magazine, anything like that. You can go on their website and click on staff list or contact us, and quite often they will have a list of people who work for them, as well as all of the job titles and contact details. If their contact details aren't there, because I always say it's best to contact them directly, not to, like an admin at news at blah blah.com email address. You want to get your business and your idea in front of an actual, person's eyeballs, not just the random, desk person that morning. You can just find, like, look at the job titles perhaps. Maybe you're a new business that's just opened up and you're like, oh, we've just opened an office here. Look on all the local media websites and find the business editor, so make it relevant. Maybe it's you've opened a spa, you want the beauty or leisure editor or something like that. So depending on what your business is, what your story is, what you're looking to get featured, you can sort of tend to find the right person. And it's actually not too tricky. Like I said, you can look on their websites. All this information is readily available to anyone. If you can't find a staff list and you just don't know who to contact from the website, you can certainly go on social media and type in the job title, editor, and then type the magazine name or the newspaper name, and it will just pop up, all the staff or anyone who works at that place. And quite often on social media, the individual journalists will have their email addresses in their profile, or they'll say DM me for a story, or they'll put a post or a tweet or whatever out saying, hey, this is my job, these are the things I write about, if you've got a story, email me here. So with a little bit of digging, you can find these people quite easily.
Yeah, certainly earlier in my career, I used to be shy about that, but I lost
Yeah.
that quickly. If you have a newsworthy story, particularly if it's in a niche area, find some relevant or newsworthy websites in that sector. And yeah, just reach out to people on LinkedIn. I
Mm.
find to be very, very good because they know you're a real person. But it's literally just a matter of reaching out to them. And like that, I was shyer because I thought, oh gosh, they're going to be angry, they're going to do this. They don't. Um, the most negative thing would be like, thanks, but no thanks. And even
Absolutely.
that's not bad at all. But
Yeah.
most of the time you get a yes, because these
Yeah.
people are looking for news and they're looking for stuff that isn't anywhere else. So if you're bringing it to them, it makes their job a lot easier. And of course, if you've already done the work, if you have like a press release written or a press page, you've made their job a lot easier for them too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. And when you do get that yes from them, so say you've introduced something and then they say, yeah, we're really interested, be the best podcast guest you can, or be the best, expert comment person that they've ever had. Respond to their emails quickly, send them your headshot, send them everything that they've asked for, or even if they didn't ask for it, just say, hey, here's my bio and headshot if you need it. Just send them everything that you can and that they've asked for in a timely manner. And when the piece goes out, whether that's a podcast episode or it's your face in a newspaper, anything like that, you can keep, you share that across your own newsletters, social media, all that kind of thing. So you're kind of promoting, that writer, that media outlet as well. And just, I don't know, it's just nice. And after you've been featured somewhere, so just send them a little message, an email saying, hey, great to talk to you, thanks for the phone interview earlier, looking forward to seeing the piece. Or whenever it comes out, you can just say, hey, I've seen this is out today, thanks so much, it was great to talk to you. If you need anyone else in the future, I'd love to chat again. And just be, I don't know, I just think that's good, just being a nice human. But I think it definitely from a journalist point of view, because I am also a journalist as well. I'm kind of half PR, half journalist now. From a journalist point of view, like you've said, bringing them the story helps, absolutely. But anything you can do after that to help them and make their life easier is just so much better. And people who do respond and are helpful, and not, constantly asking random questions and taking up their time, is that, they're going to remember that in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. People buy from people, so it pays to build
Mm.
relationships. If you go that little one step further, they'll remember you and they'll be more inclined to help next time and vice versa.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for instance,
Yeah.
like I think it was a couple of years ago now, actually, it was like during COVID and lockdowns and things, I was on one of the BBC radios, sort of talking about like the self-employed grants and like who was going to get it, who wasn't and stuff. And it was literally just a random, I was asked to be on and I was like, yeah, okay, I've got nothing else to do. That's fine. I'd love to, talk about it. And then before I knew it, like, I had BBC, I think Radio 2, Radio 4, Radio 5, like loads of websites were contacting me. I think just because I'd spoken to one, they had just gone, oh, we need a voice in self-employment. Let's call Kerri. And because, I'd shown up on time, I'd sent a voice clip when I was asked, I turned up live to an interview, I did a TV one as well, like all these different things. But because I, showed up, I did what I was asked, super quick. I was really polite and all those kind of things. I obviously stayed in their little black book of, right, when we need a self-employed person, let's just call her. And it just kind of snowballed, really. And I know that's an example of me and not a client, but it was just such a good example of how, you do one good job, just one media opportunity can turn into so many more afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. That's incredible. And in terms of being on the radio or on TV, do you have any advice for people who are about to be on either and are feeling a little nervous?
Do you know, this is weird. Okay, so I actually love this question because I love it when my clients are genuinely scared, like when they're if they're about to go on the radio, certainly, because not many clients want to do TV, I'll be honest. It's like the least favorite of all of them. Um and yeah, and it's really funny because I'm always like, I'll send a little text, that day and say, oh, good luck for later, but I don't kind of want to intrude, But then, 10 minutes before they're supposed to go in the studio, they'll like ring me and they're like, Kerri, oh my God, what do I do? Why am I here? I want to go home. And I have to kind of talk them off the ledge a little bit, bless them.
Mhm.
Which sounds weird that I enjoy my clients being stressed out, but I love that I'm the
Yeah.
person that they ring. I think the main thing is just remembering why you're there. Quite often people are engaging with the media, usually in a work related manner, right? So I'm talking about, sharing a piece of advice, maybe a bit of your business journey, something like that. It's usually work related. If it's personal, it's fine. But I think this example works better with, if it's a worky thing. It's just kind of remembering why you're there, coming back to that whole reason, your main goal for doing all the PR. And I always say when people go on the radio, I mean, it could be a podcast as well, but I suppose with radio and TV, is put together a key message, right? What's the one thing that you want to get across in this interview? And that could be as simple as your new product, I want to mention our new product, or it could be, I want to mention this this charity thing that we've done, which is why we're here. Whatever it is, whatever your one thing is that you want to get across in that interview, just keep coming back to that. That's the reason you're there. Even if you're like in the interview and you fumble and you don't know what to say, just bring everything back to that key message. But certainly when you're feeling nervous before, I always just say, just come back to that, that reason why. And even depending on your personality, I mean, I've done this before when I've been super nervous before going on camera, is I will just have to like, just ignore everyone and go take myself off and just go, hide in a toilet for 5 minutes and just kind of do some, breathing or like put some meditation music on in my ears and just to kind of slow my heart rate down, because that's what like makes me not be able to think or speak, is like, because my heart's racing, my hands are shaking and all that kind of thing. So I think as soon as I've kind of calmed myself down and those two things have gone, I can then kind of think straight. So yeah, so I suppose calling someone, getting someone to help, talk you off the metaphorical ledge, doing some deep breathing and just remembering why you're there. You can also over prepare as well.
Yeah.
That actually used to make me too nervous because I'd be like,
Mhm.
oh God, I've written this script. What if I can't remember it? So I just don't do that anymore. I think just have that one key message. It's not too much to forget. You can't forget. Well, I mean, you could forget one thing, but hopefully you won't. And just keep coming back to that. That's a very long-winded answer. I apologise.
No, it's great. So, remember your why. It's funny you say
Yeah.
about being over scripted. I once did video testimonials for a business I was working with, and the people that were given the testimonials were unbelievably professional. They were esteemed in their industries, but they had no experience of marketing or PR. So, one of them remember had a script and it was a wonderful script and he learned it line by line. Unfortunately, when he was doing the video, um, when people are remembering their lines, they tend to look off to the side. So
Oh,
every time
yes.
he
Yeah.
said anything, he was looking off to the side. I'd ask a question, he'd look off to the side.
Yeah.
So when I was watching the video back, it looked like there was someone standing off camera
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
like a gun or something saying, you better answer this correctly or else you'll be in trouble. So
Yeah.
the script
Yeah.
is great, but it's better to think on the fly. And when you speak from your heart, you know what's there anyway. So if you do flub a line, no one's going to notice anyway, I hope.
No, no, absolutely. That's the thing. No one knows if you've said
Yeah.
something wrong or you've forgotten to say something. And it's trickier, obviously, when you're in a studio and you're on camera, in the sense of like you don't have your notebook right next to you, unless you've something on the palm of your hand, and even then someone's going to catch it. Um, but I like if I'm doing something like right now, I'm on my laptop at home, right? So if I haven't, but if I wanted to, and what I have done in the past is I've just literally put sticky notes right underneath the camera to remember my key message. So I'm staring at the camera, my eyes are at the camera. They can't, no one knows that I've got, a little sticky note right there that says, say this, this is the one thing that you need to do.
Yeah.
Because it can happen quite often, you're chatting away, chat, just like, I remember doing it, in job interviews years ago. You go off on a tangent, you're like, oh my God, what did they ask me? I literally have no idea what they just said. So I just stick my post-it note and just bring it back to that, and then hopefully they'll move on.
Yeah, and I'm sure this hasn't happened in a long time, but have you ever had an experience, say earlier in your career, where you were in a radio or a TV interview and you just did something terrible and really embarrassing and you wanted the ground to swallow you up? How did you get out of it?
Yeah, absolutely, that has happened to me. So I would say, just from a like personally, I always hated public speaking. I can stand on stage and like present an award in front of 1,000 people, but ask me to stand and give a talk, I just can't do it physically. Like it's like hell on earth. So when I first started doing more media that was live BBC TV, it was like terrifying. And I do remember like sat on the sofa just before the camera came over, like honestly just wanting to run away. Right, I was just so frightened. And then they started the interview and I sort of like fumbled. There's like this hilarious, obviously my sister was watching and took photos of it, which is hilarious, of me just like looking really gormless, whereas really I'm like petrified. And I just said, I've never watched this particular bit back because it was just really uncomfortable. I think I just said something really random. It probably wasn't that bad, but to me, I felt like exactly like you said, I just wanted the world to swallow me up and I just wanted to go home and hide under a duvet for a week. It wasn't, no one else noticed. It was just me being, nervous. But what I did in that moment, and I was so proud of it, and I have since then done the same thing when I have, tried to, face my fear of public speaking, is in that moment, I thought, right, what's more important? Me looking like a fool on national telly, or my fear of public speaking? And the fear of looking silly and like messing up was higher than my nerves. And instantly in that moment, I was able to just, shut that down and just think, right, I'm just going to crack on and do it. And I was like unpicking it, on the way home in the train. And I was like, what the hell happened? Like, that was awful. And then somehow like rose like a phoenix, like it was fine. What the hell happened? And then I finally realized it was just like that instant choice in the moment of like, do I want to like a Wally or not? And I was like, no, I really don't. So I'm just going to ignore that. And then it went great.
Wow, that's a great story. Thanks so much for reliving that with us today. It's incredible. I think sometimes when we make a mistake, we want to correct it. So a lot of
Yes.
people, that's what happens. That's why you keep on digging. If you say something wrong and then you try and explain what it meant, but it didn't really mean anything, and then you stay going and going. So it's incredible you had the foresight to say, no, pretend it didn't happen. Just
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
on. Great. And we touched on podcasts, and I know you have a really great business podcast, which is definitely worth listening to. I think I personally have gotten a lot out of it. It's fantastic.
Oh, great.
From from a PR perspective, do you think it's useful for people to speak on other people's podcasts to build their own thought leadership?
Oh, so much so. I feel so strongly about that. I think it's such an incredible way to get your name out there, but also it's really good practice as well. Really good practice. If you're nervous about speaking, in a live situation, whether that's at an event or it is with the media, radio, telly, anything like that. And that is something you want to do. Obviously, you don't have to do those things, but if it's something you want to do and you're just not confident enough yet, I feel like podcasts are a really good way to practice speaking, whether that's on camera or just the audio, and just kind of practicing your topic of interest, I suppose, as well. If you've got, one or two things that you talk about all the time, podcasts are a great way to just keep practicing that speech. What is your 5-step process, or all those kind of things. I think podcasts are incredible also because you can do them from anywhere. You don't need to travel to London to be in a TV studio. You don't need to, even travel half an hour to your local town to be in the radio studio. You can just do them anywhere. I'm at home this morning. I've done the school run. I've come home, had a leisurely breakfast, and then come to chat to you. Like, what an amazing morning for me. Because I've not had to, you don't have to travel anywhere, which is a massive barrier for a lot of people. You can also access so many more people. You can talk to people. You can be on a podcast in Australia if you want to. You can just be on millions of different shows, can't you? There's so many reasons that being on podcasts are incredible, other than you get in front of new audiences. There's just so many incredible reasons, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a platform for you to speak, to build your own thought leadership, to network and to meet new people. But especially I think if somebody wants to work with you, or if you want to work with someone and they have a podcast, it's great to listen to a few episodes and find out what they're about. It can save you a lot of time instead of, say, doing discovery calls or reading a lot. If you listen
Yes.
to one 30-minute episode, you'll learn a lot more, I think, about the person, their personality, their expertise, than you would with endless amount of research.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, someone in a discovery call is going to be in a different mode than just, oh, the mic's on, let's go for it, let's record a podcast. It's a different kind of vibe. Not that people are always sleazy on sales calls or discovery calls, not at all, but it's a different, like you say, you just get to know them better in a podcast. Honestly, I can't tell you how much money I have spent over the last couple of years from buying stuff from people who have been on podcasts. So like, I'll be listening to a chat, 10 minutes in, like, I'm loving it, it's really enjoyable, and then they'll mention their book and I'm like, Oh, okay. So while the podcast is still on, I'm now on Amazon, Google, or Google, like trying to find their book or their whatever it is that they've mentioned. And I've bought it and it's on its way to me tomorrow before the interview's even finished. So it is an incredible platform, whether you're a host or you just go and guest on other people's, as to get in front of people, but also to it absolutely will help your business from a sales point of view as well, because you get people like me that will just buy your stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true too. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about was newsjacking. What is
Yes.
newsjacking?
Okay, so in a nutshell, it's basically if it's you jumping in on a topical news story. So, for instance, if something, you wake up, you're eating breakfast, you put the news on, and there's a story, something's happened with, like, in the education sector, say. So, there's a big news, whether it's the Prime Minister's done something, the Education Secretary, or someone high up has said something, maybe there's a new law, anything like that. If you are a teacher, a head teacher, you work in a school, or you're a parent, anything like that, you're kind of involved, you can now jump in on that story. So you could contact your local BBC radio station or your local ITV station and just say, hey, I'm a head teacher at blah blah school. I've seen this news. If you need someone to cover, like, as an expert, to comment on the story today, just give me a call. Here's my number. I'd love to talk to you. That's just one example. But if there's something in the news currently that you can jump in on, of course, you can create your own content and become your own little newsroom doing your own stuff. But to engage with the media, you can jump in and offer yourself to become part of the news cycle, really.
Wow, that's incredible. So if you're reading the newspaper, try and find something that's in some way applicable to you or your business, and then you can
Mm.
get involved in the story yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to do with clients. We've got so much media coverage for that, because especially if it's a hot topic, even if it's national news. So the example I just used, say education, which would affect the whole nation. Um,
Mhm.
you can still jump in at a local level. So of course, all your big news outlets nationally are going to be covering it, but so will all your local area ones as well. So it might be the local paper that puts their own spin on it. Here's the national news, but what does that mean for our town? What does that mean for our area? So they're still going to be covering it as well. So you can jump in on things, whether that's a website, your local media, national. There's so many opportunities there.
Incredible. Okay, great. So thanks so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure to speak to you, and the insights were really useful.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
And finally, if somebody wants to get in touch with you for PR training or coaching, how would they do so?
I would say come and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Kerri L Watt. That's the letter L in the middle. Google likes it. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn or just go to kerrylwatt.co.uk.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, like, and share. You can get in touch by visiting the website wittybanter.com. That's witty-banter.com. Or follow Witty Banter on LinkedIn to get updates as they happen.